Today we're going to be walking through some different use cases as well as the setup and configuration between Infor's CloudSuite distribution and Avalara. Through this presentation, you'll get an understanding of how the solutions can coexist and what necessary configurations must be made from an ERP standpoint. So to kick things off, let's look at how CloudSuite distribution uses Avalara at the point of order entry to calculate sales tax. So here I am within order entry in advanced line entry mode with my header totals panel open up on the left, so you can start to see as we add line items to the order, sales tax is going to be started to add to that order total as well. So we're just going to go through here. We're going to add a couple of line items to the order. And as I add this line item to the transaction, you'll start to notice on the left-hand side, my taxes totals start to go up. And that's based on a call out to the rate tables within Avalara. So based on how we have this configured, it's going to go out in the system. If that is a taxable line item or product, it will go out, pull that rate detail, calculate that rate right here at the point of order entry. Again, as I add another product to the order, it will continue to add to that tax total if this is a taxable item or based on how the customer is set up. Again, if I type in one more product here, how I can start to see if that item is taxable or not is that down below by going to my extended fields, I can start to see that taxable checkbox. If for some reason I wanted to remove this as a taxable item from the sales transaction, I could uncheck that checkbox, put in a reason code as to why this was not taxable, put in the quantity the customer wanted to order, and as I add that line item to the order, notice my tax amount in this case does not go up. So with the last aspect of this order, I can come to my taxes and totals tab where I can see total tax amounts for the entire transaction. I also have a tab down here for tax detail where the system will give me a breakout of the tax rate calculation as those rates are coming from the Avalara system. So here I can see things broken out from a federal, state, county, and city perspective, depending on how granular you're getting. You can see the sales base and the different sales amount, tax amount based on the different sales rates that are coming from the Avalara toolset. So at the point of order entry, that sales tax rate is being calculated in near real time as the line items are being entered to the order. Again, that has to come down to if the product is taxable and the settings that are on the customer and or ship to record as well. So now let's take a look at a credit and rebill use case where CloudSuite distribution leverages Avalara to calculate the correct tax amounts. So here we are back in Infor's CloudSuite distribution in the order entry initiation stage where we're going to be creating a credit and rebill situation. So I'm going to go ahead and select the customer. This time, instead of creating a regular stock order, we're going to select a correction order. As I go ahead and hit next, it'll take me to the next step of the process. It's going to ask me for a return or a just reason code, which are user definable out there. So I'm going to say the reason why we're going through this adjustment is because I charged the customer sales tax on a line item that I was not supposed to. As I go ahead and hit next, it'll ask me if I want to tie this to the original invoice number. If I do want to tie it to the original invoice number, it would actually net that invoice. Or another use case for this is that we could just create a credit against the customer's account for the difference, which is what we are going to do. So as I get into order entry here, I can identify the product in which we charge the customer sales tax, the quantity in which we charge them that sales tax against. As we add that line item to the order, notice the negative line total amount for the cost of that inventory and the negative taxes for the taxes that are being calculated against that particular item as well. So that tax information, again, is coming right from the rate detail that is set up within Avalara. Now, in order to go ahead and debit this and charge the customer the correct information, I'm going to go ahead and type in that same product again, type in the quantity that the customer ordered, and this time change it from a credit to a debit. And down below in my extended fields, here I have my taxable or not taxable checkbox. In this case, I was not supposed to charge the customer tax, so I'm going to unremove that checkbox. I could put in a reason code as to why I am not charging them tax, but as I add that line item to the order, you'll start to know that our net total order amount goes down to -70 because we are going to be crediting them back for the taxes that we charged them on the original transaction. We can also see a breakdown of that detail if we go to our taxes and totals tab and we look at our tax details down below, the system will actually break out the base sale information as well as the sale amount and sales rate or tax rate based on the city, state, county, and so on and so forth. So that's what it looks like to do one use case of a credit rebill in CloudSuite distribution and how it leverages Avalara to pull in the correct tax rates at the time we're creating this transaction. Another capability of the Avalara integration with CloudSuite distribution is address verification at the point of customer or ship-to creation, as well as at the point of order entry when entering a one-time ship-to. If we go into the core ERP system, here under Company Setup on the Taxes tab, if we are using Avalara as our tax interface, down below you will see there is a checkbox that you can check for address validation. When this is turned on, Avalara will now validate the address that is being entered into CloudSuite distribution, either in customer setup, customer ship to setup, or even at the point of order entry if entering in a one-time ship to. So just as an example, if we go into customer setup here I already have a customer record established, but if I was creating one from scratch, as my user entered the address detail and hit save, it would validate that what they entered was a valid address. Or if a user comes in here and tries to make an adjustment to an already existing address, so maybe I type in Minneapolis for this particular customer and I try and hit save, the system will now prompt me with a message saying that that is not a standard form of address, and it will actually use a suggestion. So it's actually telling me that the city, based on the zip code and state information and the address detail that I entered, should probably be Denver. I can also go ahead and make changes from the screen and override if I want to, or I could have it revalidate if I made a change to this and I wanted to recheck that that was in standard form. Otherwise, I can use the system suggestion and that'll update the customer record with the appropriate detail. Same thing at the point of order entry, where we could be working with the customer. Let's say they're interested in a product here, so I'm going to add that product to this transaction. And let's say they want me to ship this inventory to their customer. So instead of sending it to the typical customer ship to, I'm going to send it to a one-time ship to address. So I'm going to hit edit ship to address where I can populate some information on the fly. Maybe I've typed in their customer's name, maybe their address. So I'm just going to type in 269th Street. And then city, we're going to do Newport, and state, we'll do Minnesota, and zip code 55055. When I enter this information and hit OK, it will again prompt me with that address validation screen. So it's looking at everything, and in this case, it's adding some extra digits there for the zip code. So I could continue to use what I've already typed in, make adjustments and revalidate, or use the suggested, and it'll update that detail as the ship to address for this particular transaction. So now let's talk about how this actually gets configured within CloudSuite distribution. There are several steps that need to take place before you're able to take advantage of this integration. Now, depending on the tax method you're using, some setup, configuration, features, and functions in the core ERP system may differ just a little bit. So to kind of kick things off, let's take a look at the different setup screens needed to make this configuration work. To define your tax method and tax interface with the ERP, you're going to have to access your System Administrator Company Setup function to define these settings to ensure that the appropriate address and tax fields are being displayed. Depending on the tax method that you select, the fields that you're going to see in today's presentation may vary. So from your main screen, we're going to go to System Administrator module, Setup, and then Company. Here you can search and select the company you are setting this up for, and then can drill into that company detail. On the Taxes tab, under Tax Settings, this is where you'll specify the tax method you're going to use. The tax method option is used by the system to determine what taxing logic is used when calculating taxes on sales orders and vendor invoices. You have three different options, which are sales use tax if you're operating in the United States, goods and services tax if you're operating a Canadian company, or value-added tax if your business is located in a country that collects VAT, such as the United Kingdom. When it comes to the tax interface, you're going to want to select AvaTax. The tax register checkbox down below indicates that you're integrated with a third-party tax compliant application and enables that third party to store data. In the tax analysis field, you can select either accrual or cash depending on when the system records the tax amounts. Once you finish these steps, you'll want to save your work and log out and back into CloudSuite distribution for your changes to take place. Now, there are some other setups that need to take place in company setup as well, such as on the Required tab, you need to ensure that the state field is filled out correctly. Under the currency section, you need to ensure your company's domestic currency is specified, and back on the taxes tab in the AvaTax section, you need to specify the point of origin. Selecting Ship To indicates the customer, and also specify the point of acceptance. Selecting Ship From indicates you, the distributor. The next setup has to do with setting up non-taxable reason codes to match the Avalara entity use codes. Entity codes are custom values that link customers to specific tax rules. So these codes are associated with exemption tax rules in each state and Canadian province. So back at the main screen, we're going to start by going to the System Administrator module, select Setup, and then select Table Code Value. You're going to want to use the table list dropdown and select country to define the country in which your company resides, and also set up country records for any foreign customers or vendors that you do business with. Once you're finished, you're also going to want to set up non-taxable reason codes. So use the table code dropdown again and scroll down until you find non-taxable reasons, or simply do a search. Here, you're going to want to create a reason code to match each AvaTax entity use code. Once you have both of these two tables configured in both applications, you can then exit out of the table code values function. If you are using restocking fees or purchase order add-ons, you need to set up those table code values as well. Optionally, if you're using foreign currency for customers or vendors with the integration, you're going to want to define the values for that currency in System Administrator Setup Currency. Taxes are calculated in the currency of your general ledger. When a sales order or purchase order is created for a customer or vendor with a foreign currency, all the monetary values on the sales order or purchase order are displayed in the currency of that customer or vendor. However, the GL is updated using your domestic currency. When a call is made to calculate taxes in Avalara or AvaTax, the order amounts are converted to your domestic currency before being calculated. The tax amounts are stored in the system for posting to the GL, and then those values are converted back to the foreign currency to display on the invoice. Add-on charges, including freight charges that are applied to an invoice or order header, will also be defined in the System Administrator Order Entry add-on setup. These add-on codes are submitted to Avalara as a part of the transaction and are included in the tax calculation. When it comes to the tax master record, you must define a tax master record for each jurisdiction type or group combination in which you have nexus and are required to collect, report, and pay taxes. The purpose of setting up the tax master record is to load the general ledger account that will be used for posting taxes. So for example, you might create a tax master record for each of these combinations listed below. When it comes to configuring customer records, you'll use customer setup and customer ship to setup to set up your customers and any tax specific information. When you set up customer records that use foreign currency, you need to ensure you correctly select the currency in the customer record and that setting matches the foreign currency setting in the System Administrator currency setup. From the main screen, we will go into the customer module, select customer setup, and select customer. Search and select a customer here within the grid, and then in the general view, make sure that you verify the correct address and state is for that correct customer. On the taxing tab, verify that the taxing information state is the same as the state value on the general view. In the taxable status section, use the radio button to select the taxability. So typically, you will select taxable, but if the customer is non-taxable, you must also specify a non-taxable reason, which we set up earlier in our table code values. In the certification section, if the customer is exempt, you can specify the tax certificate number and expiration date. A lot of the tax certificate information detail will be stored within the Avalara component of the toolset. But what we can do in CloudSuite distribution is give the user visibility into this detail so they can actually see the tax number and expiration date from a single source. And we can also run workflows against tax certification. So if the tax certificate expires within the next 30 or 90 days, notifications can be sent automatically to the customer or to users within your department so they know they need to go out and ask that customer for a more updated form. To integrate a warehouse with Avalara Tax, use product warehouse description setup to set up your warehouse and any tax specific information. Avatax locations do not map to tax codes. The warehouses are created as locations in Avatax because they are used for tax reporting. So some states require tax liabilities to be broken out separately for each location. So from the main screen, we'll go into the product module, select setup, and select warehouse description. Select a warehouse you want to set this up for, and on the General tab, always verify that the address and state are correct. On the Taxing tab, specify the taxing state or province where this warehouse is located. If your company has a tax method of value-added tax or VAT, use product setup to prepare your product records for VAT processing. Use warehouse product setup if you're mapping Avalara product codes to your products, or if you want to save time, configure taxes at the product line level to have it mapped to products from the same vendor product line. If you're using Avalara for accounts payable processing, you will set up taxing in vendor and vendor shift from records as well. The fields displayed vary depending upon the tax method you have selected in System Administrator Company Setup. When you set up vendor records to use foreign currency, ensure you correctly select the currency on the General tab of the vendor record, and that setting matches the foreign currency setting in the System Administrator Currency Setup. So that wraps up our presentation on some of the different use cases and configuration between Infor CloudSuite distribution and Avalara. With this integration, customers can expect a seamless automated tax calculation solution between their core ERP and Avalara.